Well, welcome to week 2 of Data Science and Technologies. I am Dr. Liz Pierce, and we are webcasting from EIT 220. We do have a sign-up sheet for folks who are coming to the in-class session. So we've just, we have a record for folks who are joining online, not to worry. The Blackboard system logs keep a record of the comings and goings of the virtual classroom. So wanted to make sure we do keep recordings of every session. So I will, particularly the first 2 weeks, because we have folks, of course, who are adding during week 1, and we have a few folks who will be adding during week 2. I will just try to get out the recording links from the last couple sessions just until, everybody is then settled in for the semester. In addition to the class sessions, every week we will have material in addition to the lecture. And sometimes in the lecture we can cover the additional material, but sometimes we just run out of time. And so it's good for students to keep up with the readings. So if you go into week 1, there were 2 articles, and they both were essentially blogs. One was a blog from Ederica, and it was called The Beginner's Guide to Data Science, or basically, what is data science, a beginner's guide. And this one starts off with, gives you a nice kind of overall perspective on data science, a little bit of its history, maybe contrasting that with some of the fields like business analytics, business intelligence, kind of showing you how they relate to each other. And one of the things they have in this article is a demonstration of a data analysis project. And I wanted you to take a look at that because in this course, you're going to be doing a data science project. So seeing as many examples of a data analysis will be very useful. And a couple things I wanted to just point out is often when you're doing the background on a project, it helps to read a bunch of different articles. And these 2 articles are a nice example of why you can't rely just on a single source, even if it's a pretty good source. So I like this Ederica article quite a bit. One thing you'll notice is if you read that article, the author has a preference for R. And the second article, the author has a preference for Python. So one of the things we'll be talking about is R versus Python. But often as you're trying to figure out, what is the right tool for you, keep in mind different authors have different preferences, and we'll talk a little bit more about the pros and cons of using R versus Python. But one example, I'm pretty sure the Beginner's Guide, the first article, I think they did the analysis in R, and certainly the second example, they did their analysis in Python. The other thing is that when you read the first article, they describe the data set, but you'll notice that they don't really talk about the target variable. We know that they're trying to look at a data set, and they're looking at, this is actually a published data set that was taken from an Indian tribe that they were looking at the prevalence of diabetes, and they were trying to look at things like age and gender and various characteristics in order to try to come up with a model to predict who was at risk of getting diabetes. In the first article, and I don't know why, they have all the explanatory variables, but they never mention the target variable. It turns out in the second article, you get a little better description that in this data set, there was what we call a Y variable, the dependent variable, the thing we wanted to predict, which was an indicator variable for each person's record, there was that indicator variable said, well, this person had developed diabetes, but this person had not. So it was kind of a 1-0, yes, no type of thing. So your model actually had a way of being able to, basically based on these explanatory variables, which combination did the best job of predicting or classifying correctly that this person developed diabetes, this person did not. And that is very characteristic when you are doing research on the internet. Sometimes authors are not 100% complete. They may leave stuff out, which is another reason why it pays to read a couple different sources to get the full picture. The other thing you probably will note in your reading is that the first author, in order to predict who was more likely to develop diabetes, they used a decision tree in order to predict their classifications. In the second article, they used logistic regression also to do the same thing, to predict who was going to develop diabetes. That is another common thing that you will see. Many times when we're trying to predict something, we try a couple different methods. We might use, in this case, a decision tree, see how well it performs, how easy is it to interpret, to figure out which variables are most significant, most insightful in terms of helping us to make a prediction. And we'll compare and contrast, we'll try another technique like logistic regression. How did that do? Maybe we'll try a neural net. Maybe we'll try a random forest. So it's very common when you're doing these projects, because people will ask, well, which is the best model? Well, the truth is a lot of times we will try 3, 4, 5, 6 different models to be able to say, well, this one is the one that we feel, is the best for these reasons. Okay. So I encourage you, make sure you're just not writing off those articles. So you want to make sure that you do go into the content. And here, what I'm going to do, here's what I'll do, just to make sure, is let me just do a visual. Visuals are very good. All right. So just remember from week 1, this guy here, week 1, and it may be closed, so you got to open it up. Go into class materials and make sure that you have read from January 2025, that was last updated, what is data science? And that will give you one perspective, and they'll give you all these, but that's an excellent article. And then contrast it with a second article, and this was actually, this dates back to 2018. Actually, the Ederica article also dates back, it's just they recently updated it. But this one does a very nice job of actually kind of explaining in their project. They gave an overview, they gave a data description, they talked about how they explored and kind of made sure that the data was prepared, and then how they trained and evaluated a machine learning model, and how they tested and evaluated it, as well as used it to help them make predictions. And so, as I say, this is another nice example, because the best way to learn how to do a data science project is to look as many projects as you can. The more projects that you see, the more you're able to say, oh, I like that. I like how they handled that. And in this other one, I liked how they handled this other piece. So just keep in mind, that's an excellent way to help with the learning. And it's no different. It's the same way when you say, well, how did I learn how to do the best recipe for something? Well, you just cook a lot of different recipes. Or if you say, well, how do people learn how to decorate their living room? Well, they looked at a lot of people's living rooms and figured out, what they could afford and what colors they liked and what kind of furniture they liked. And so that's the word. So, in terms of, in addition to the class lectures and working on the assignments, you want to do the readings and you want to just spend time, just walking around the lot, kicking tires and seeing, hey, what do I like? Okay. But anyway, both these articles, and don't worry if you don't understand everything in these articles, the more that you look at, the more familiar things will be coming. And we'll be talking a lot more about how to work with Python. Okay, but let me just check because, let me just pause for a moment. And let me go back to the blank whiteboard. So any questions on the readings? Any comments, any questions? The other thing that I wanted to check on is on the assignment for week 1. And again, for folks who added the course late, not to worry, you've got plenty of time. We had an assignment for week 1, and let me again. Let's just go back. Use this guy, and let's go back and get the first data science assignment. And it's due today, but again, that's just a target. That's just, use that for planning purposes. Is there any problem with doing your assignment yesterday? Yeah, yesterday is fine. Tomorrow is okay. The day after tomorrow, try to get it in within the next week or so. But these are the list of tutorials to choose from because they kind of fit our theme from week 1, which is an introduction to data science and big data. Now, I've had some students ask me, and it's a good question. They said, well, they said there was another tutorial, for example, data privacy, and they said, I would love to do that one first. And that is not a problem. It turns out the data privacy tutorial will be part of the week 14 assignment. So if you do a tutorial for a different week, maybe that is one that you really wanted to do first. That is fine. Just submit that tutorial to the appropriate assignment folder. So if you do something, for example, I had another student do prompt engineering. That will be part of week 8, text analytics. So by all means, as long as you're doing 1 tutorial a week, you're going to be just fine. And you can go into Blackboard and check your grades to keep track of, these are the weekly assignments I still need to do. And I've also had some folks who said, well, there were some tutorials I was really interested in, but they're not part of an assignment. Can I still get some credit for doing this, additional learning? And absolutely. So when you do your final project report, you are welcome to include a section of all the additional tutorials or trainings or references that you used to help you develop your project. So anything you use to help you get the right mindset, to get the right data set, to get the right skill set, to help you get the right tool set, you are welcome to have a section in your project report. It could be at the end or in the appendix where you list all your learning sources. Okay. So does that make things does that make things clear for folks? You got to do just not all, just one of the assigned tutorials for a given week, so we stay within that theme. That's to keep me sane and to, for the grading. But it's okay if you want to pick something from an upcoming week, just put it into that assignment folder. And if you do extra ones that are not assigned, put them in your project report so you get credit that way. I can take that into consideration as I review your project. Oh my goodness, look at all this additional background education that they did for their project.
Okay. Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that I am doing the right thing. So I went into cognitive AI and I chose a data science methodology and
yes.
went all the way through modules 1 through 5, did the lab exercises, got the badge, and got the certification. Is that the minimum expectation for each one of them?
Yes, and then you just have to submit to show that you've completed. Submit the certificate, or you can submit the progress report, because sometimes cognitive class is kind of snippy. Sometimes I think they're either doing maintenance or they've got too much work going on, and sometimes it doesn't produce a certificate, or the certificate shows up 2 weeks later. So I do accept a progress report. Also, just be aware with cognitive class, the main thing is getting the certificate, so doing the review questions and the final exam. Sometimes the labs are not up to date. So, if you find that there are certain tutorials where you are able to watch the videos, you're able to answer the questions, you're able to do the final, you're able to get your progress report saying that, hey, you earned a certificate. But you're not able to do the labs because the links are out of date, the software's out of date. Don't worry about it. The main thing is, did you watch the videos, and did you get the kind of like reading the chapter? Did you get the basic concepts and terminologies?
Okay, it's good to know, because I did have problems with some of the download links.
Yes.
And then I did have problems with some of the code that was in there, the R code that was in there, and I had to figure out how to modify that to get it to work. And I wasn't sure if that was part of the expectation.
Right. And I was going to say, those you can kind of skim over. Now, sometimes if it's an area like prompt engineering and you're going to be doing prompt engineering for your project, you may want to take a closer look, but you may also want to find a more up-to-date tutorial. It is amazing in this area. I have found that when they do a tutorial, it's probably, the links are good for about 3 months. And then once a tutorial starts getting 6 months old, 9 months old, a year old, the versions have changed, the links have changed, the program stuff has been deprecated in the programming language. It is amazing how quickly things change in our space. And so consequently, the concepts and the videos are all really good. But it is amazing how quickly those labs go out of date. And often when I'm getting ready to do a demo, even though that demo worked perfectly last time I taught the course, I usually have to run through it to say, oh, did anything change? So just be aware, in our area, this is what keeps us busy, is that the stuff gets published and it's good for a little while, but it's kind of like a gallon of milk. It stays fresh, it seems, for just about as long. And then it's like, oh my gosh, now it's sour milk,
Right. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. And now let's talk about, so the main thing, we have these weekly assignments just to kind of reinforce the lectures for the week. But the real thing that I want students to be able to do when they come out of this course is to be able to feel comfortable doing a a data project where they are either analyzing data or building some sort of data application that allows people to work with their data, get insights from their data, be able to take action on their data. So if we just go for a moment, or I think let me just switch things around. Okay, I will move this screen over here, and I will move, this screen over here, and then let's just see. Oh yeah, I'll move this over here. And now let me go, so you're not just looking at, for the poor folks online, they're seeing like darkness. Okay, let's get some light. Okay, now we're all good. Okay, so let's take a look. And when we look at what goes into a data science project, now I was going to say you can go out and look at a whole bunch of different phases for a data science project. It's kind of like developing a piece of software. There's agile, there's waterfall, there's extreme programming. There's all kinds of methods for developing a piece of application. It really depends on the characteristics of the application. And it's the same thing with a data science project. You may find that the phases that work best for you are something different. And in fact, data science methodology, I'll just show you real quick. So take a look. You'll notice here that we have a whole bunch of different diagrams. So I'm using the Ederica because it's 6 steps, but definitely there are 12-step models, 10-step models, lots of different models out there. So just keep in mind that if you don't like the Ederica model, hey, it's like saying, well, I don't like that particular recipe for chocolate cake. Great. There's 100 other recipes. Find one that fits, what you want to accomplish with your upcoming menu. Okay. But let's talk about first one. And I was going to say, I think the hardest steps are the discovery and then the data preparation. I think once you get past steps 1 and 2, the other steps I think are a little easier, but they are all important. So let's run through these steps here. Okay. So what I have here is, all right, and so let me go. I'm going to close up week 1, and let me open up week 2. Okay. And when we open up the class materials, okay. So we've got, these are my notes from last year. So discovery. I want to do a data science project that, and keep in mind, maybe you want to do some exploration, maybe you're looking for some root cause analysis or associations because you're trying to kind of understand diagnostics, what seems to be influencing or causing what. Or maybe you're like, well, I want to use that information because I want to build some sort of prediction or classification model. Or maybe what I'm trying to do is something prescriptive. I'm trying to figure out what is the optimal solution. Or I'm trying to be able to tell people, based on simulation, here's what you should be doing. And the question is, what are some ideas for data science projects? And actually, That's why early on in the semester we're talking about projects, because it'll probably take you a couple weeks of just walking around, looking around, searching around to get ideas. Sometimes people are fortunate because if they're coming from industry, they may have been given a data problem or an analysis problem from their boss. And then they're like, oh, okay, I know exactly what I need to be working on. But for a lot of folks, it's like, man, what do I want to do? And keep in mind, this is why I recommend taking a broad strategy. Maybe take some time and, for example, see what news is going on. What is your favorite source for news? Is it the BBC? Is it CNN? See what's going on in the news that may involve data. Maybe you want to take a look at a favorite magazine like Science or National Geographic. You just start off looking at broad. Here are some other ideas. Kaggle has some very nice competitions. And by the way, it does not have to be an active competition. You can actually say, hey, I want to look at, all competitions. Just a little background on Kaggle. Kaggle is a competition crowdsourcing site. Some of the competitions are for educational purposes. Others are being actively sponsored by an organization that this one is actually about to close in 6 days, but that's okay. The data stays out there, and you're welcome to try your hand at doing a competition. The competitions, though, generally have some prize money. Notice in Kaggle, teams are allowed. In this class, I'd like to see everybody do their own project, but could you kind of have an informal team where maybe 3 people say, we'd really like to try this challenge, and we're all going to contribute the same amount of work, and as a person doing a project on their own. And so typically, you're looking for a project that will take about, I usually tell folks, look for a project that's about 30 to 40 hours worth of work, because you're going to spread that over the semester. So think of that as that's part of your homework every week, is working on your project. So if you divide that by 10 weeks, after the first couple of weeks when you get your ideas, if you're spending 2 hours or so on your project, you should be finished up by week 14. And so you might say, so how would it work if 3 people were sort of coordinating? Well, that means that if a normal person would be looking at a dozen sources, each person should look at a dozen sources. It's the idea that my expectation is if you've got a team, it's not 3 people doing the work of one. If 3 people are doing the work of one, that means I can fire 2 people and just keep one of you. Whoever did the most work or knew what was going on. So keep in mind, but this can be very useful because, as I mentioned, often if you're doing a data science project, you may be trying several different techniques. And each of those techniques could take, 30, 40 hours to fully explore and investigate. So this is a great example where folks could be, getting together to brainstorm a challenge. But as I say, one person might be investigating decision trees. One person might say, look, I'm really going to go deep dive as to what's the best regression model. Someone else could say, yeah, I really want to try, neural nets. And each person could do a very full report on their technique. And it's fine. I encourage folks to disclose, hey, the three of us, these were certain things we did in common, but each person was responsible for this part of the project, and each person, can stand up proud and say, hey, my work stands on its own as, being 30 to 40 hours worth of work over the semester. But that's a great place, to look for ideas. Another great site is challenge.gov. These are challenges put out by the federal government. Some of them are more data sciences, others are more engineering, but you can look them over just to see, is there something, again, that at least inspires you. Not that you necessarily have to do that challenge, but you found an interesting problem that you find inspirational. This is another neat site. This one is where you can, again, find projects. And again, this is another challenge site. Let me see what we do. Just see. Let's try w02c crowd. Okay. All right. Now they updated their website, and let's just see. Oh. Here's our book a demo. Crowd capabilities. Again, this has a number of different areas, and somewhere in here, this is marketing. Actually, what they're trying to do here is they're trying to market to get where they make their money is the folks putting up prizes and putting up challenges. And so let's see if we can find out. Let's see if they have their resources. Let's just see. They have their knowledge base, who we are. Let's just see. They have their bug bounties, meet the team. They have their use cases. And somewhere in here, as I say, I thought that was w02c crowd. Let's see if one of these, oh, here we go. You have to click around. Okay, what challenge will you solve today? Yes, thank you. Here's your challenge center. That's very interesting. They changed their data set to really focus on the folks who basically put up the money, because that's where they make their money. But this is where you can find, you can look over, well, here are the problems that people are putting up money to help solve. And again, this is just to get some ideas. And then you may want to think about, would any of these problems benefit from a data science approach? What else do we have? Yes, another thing is Google for like big data analytics. Again, you can find out a lot of articles, again, on what people are working on in the area of data science. So that can be useful. You can search for data competitions. Hackathons are very useful too. Again, you're just looking for ideas. So that's a place to find ideas. Conferences can sometimes be a source of ideas. What are people writing about, presenting about? And then what else do we have? You are not limited to the United States. This is a Japanese, and you can get Google to translate this for you. But this is a great place to, you can look around the world. So maybe you're not interested in a U.S. challenge. That's fine. Maybe there's a challenge in your home country or another country. Again, medical image analysis challenges. So maybe you're interested in a particular area. So, if you're in the medical area, if you're interested in DNA, RNA, proteins, bioinformatics tools are very useful. If you're interested in organs, a lot of the study of organs come from image, MRIs, they come from things like biopsy, so image analysis is big. If you're interested in patient health, electronic health record data is very, very useful. And if you're interested in the spread of diseases, so for example, bird flu, everybody's talking about bird flu. Using a lot of people for pandemics, they use mapping. They use graphical information systems. They're looking for patterns with location. But the medical area is very, very rich. So maybe you know of an industry or a company that you would want to work for. Think about what kind of data that they work on, what kind of problems or challenges are they trying to deal with. So I've got a couple of links to get folks started. Social impact. Yeah. Are you interested in making a social impact? Yeah, there are data challenges out there. Okay. And I was going to say, crowd analytics is another one that students have mentioned to me. But discovery is one, it's researching an idea. And then as part of researching the idea, it is important to then read up about that idea. So if you're looking at something like looking at vaccine hesitancy, that's a great topic. It turns out, but it pays to start with sources like Wikipedia, and then read articles on the internet on vaccine hesitancy. That's a fascinating topic. It turns out vaccine hesitancy goes back to 1800s with the very first invention of the very first vaccine to combat smallpox. And it turns out that people's nervousness about vaccines is actually, it literally goes back over 200 years. So it's a very interesting phenomenon, and it's one that countries have wrestled with all over the world. And so it's good. Part of the reason of picking an idea early is to give you time to read up about that idea. What's the history? What's the background? And then as you build up your knowledge, you can then say, oh, okay, now let me kind of go to sources like Google Scholar, or PubMed, who's publishing or who might have good case studies or data analysis projects or other things that I can look at. And it is fine as you're coming across good sources, do remember to cite those sources and reference those sources. One is giving credit where credit is due, but it's also demonstrating to the reader, wow, this person, they did their homework on this topic. And I was also going to say that, yes, doing those references is how you build your knowledge about the topic. Okay. And I must say, for this class, this is a learning class, As long as you are citing and explaining, hey, I got the idea for this method from this article, and I was using, their code to help me experiment and develop my models. In this class, that's okay. The key thing for us is it's like following a recipe. It is not a problem that you went to the Betty Crocker cookbook and got the Betty Crocker chocolate cake recipe and that you followed it. The fact that you're crediting, I used the Betty Crocker, cake recipe, and I not only followed the recipe, but I understand what I did. I understand what flour is. I understand what salt is. I understand what cocoa is. I understand the techniques for putting together the cake. That's what's important. This is how you learn. So it's very, very much like, if I want people to learn how to be a great painter, one classical technique is you go to the art museum and you practice the great masters. And it's not, and as long as you're upfront, this is what I'm doing, and I am learning from what I am doing, then that's fine. Where folks get into trouble is either one, they're putting out stuff like it's their own, and that's what makes them in danger of being called plagiarists, because they're not being upfront to say, hey, I got my inspiration from so-and-so. But number two, you don't want to blindly copy. So, you want to make sure that if somebody asks you, well, how did that model work? Or how did that code work? You want to be able to say, look, I researched, what each line of code means. I played around with it. I understand how it runs. I researched the data set. I know what's in the data set. The fact that you are learning, the thing that gets people concerned is if you just blindly take stuff. I mean, that's just like, you're walking across the parking lot and you find, cake in the parking lot. Where did that cake come from? Is that cake safe to eat? The key thing is to know what you're doing. And it's not a problem to follow a recipe or to take inspiration from a recipe. Again, just make sure you give it credit and you have practiced and experimented and you know that what you're serving up is safe and valid. Okay, so that is the first phase, all right, which is discovery. Okay, and maybe rather than go back and forth, I will just say, yes, if you look at that Ederica article, the first phase was discovery. And as I say, don't underestimate how much time it takes to come up with an idea. You really want to be starting this week thinking about ideas so that hopefully, a month from now, you've got your idea. Okay, so what comes after discovery? Yeah, it's data preparation. Okay, I've got my idea. Now I've got to track down data. Data can come in many different forms. Maybe you're looking for sound data, image data, text data, tabular data. Let me just say another way also that you can come up with an idea. Sometimes you have a problem and you come up with the data, but if you're having problems, excuse me, maybe you want to check out what data is available and then come up with a problem or a question you can ask about that data. So keep in mind, maybe you want to check out a data hub. Many cities, state, countries have a open data repository where, in the case of the Little Rock, you can go to their data catalog and you can click on I want to see data sets, and you can get to see all the data that they have. And a data catalog is super nice. I mean, folks know, I don't want to say the Sears catalog because nobody remembers the Sears catalog unless you're an old fogey like me. But if you go to the Amazon marketplace, right, you're looking for socks. You search on socks, it has the list of all the socks that are for sale. You go, you click on an item, and you get all the product reviews, you get all the information about that sock. Well, that's what a data catalog page is. It is so that you can be able to see information about this data set. What kind of information is in this data set? Can I get a preview of this data set? And so a data catalog is very, very useful because it basically gives you all the information about that data, and you can filter it and you can decide what you want to work with. I've got some resources on, World Bank. Are you interested in finance? Are you interested in World Health? Are you interested in the Google Public Data Explorer? Are you interested of open data on AWS, European Union? There's 538, don't even know what that is, U.S. Census Bureau, data.gov, DBpedia. There is, there's more free data sets, okay? So if you're having trouble, maybe you want to skip over, just start looking at data sets and then think, well, is there an interesting data set that I want to either A, explore, or B, look for patterns, or C, pick something that I want to predict or classify, or maybe I have a challenge or a problem and I'm trying to come up with an optimal solution to prescribe. Okay. We'll move around. Sometimes there's specialty. This was one, ALS. This was a challenge to put out all the data that they had on ALS to see if anybody could come up with some interesting applications with that data. So maybe there is a particular disease, literally, if you said, no, I'm interested in diabetes data sets. Oh, yeah. Folks have, put together a data set. If you say, wait a second, I'm interested in Arkansas, health data. What is this? Line infections. Okay. I have a student working on this area. It turns out that if you're interested in a particular issue in hospitals, it's, there's all sorts of bacteria. And when somebody's in a hospital, they're very vulnerable. Bacteria that wouldn't bother normal people, because you might have tubes or incisions, now bacteria can get in and, people's immune systems are compromised. And so this is a big issue with hospitals, preventing different types of hospital-acquired infections. And it turns out that there are different types, and it turns out that Arkansas has put together some data sets to be able to monitor this in the state. So I think it's called HAI Arkansas data set. Okay. There we go. Yeah. And it also has to be reported nationally. So, but if you search around in this area, they've got they've built dashboards and things. But if you If you search around, you can actually find the data. And as they say, they kind of move things around. So, but as I say, if you are interested in a particular area or a particular disease, good news. If you're looking for text, Project Gutenberg has 75,000 free ebooks that you can take a look at. There are folks that have, there's this movie database has a free API. So if you're into movies, you can see what you can build using the data they've collected. If you're more into music, AudioDB has a nice API. Many of the social media APIs like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube do have an API. Now, some of these are free, but things like Dr. Agrawal used to use Twitter, now X, all the time. Since Elon Musk got hold of Twitter and turned it into X, it's very hard for anybody to get any free data. So, you know, things change. But I know, for example, Netflix, a data set, you can find either through Kaggle or DataCamp or sometimes directly from Netflix. Yeah, they may have, again, look to see if they have a free tier. But seriously, you know, if you're interested in weather, what I want to show you. Oh, US Open Data. Yeah, over 300,000 data sets available. But they have everything. You want to study permafrost, they've got a data set, you know. So you get the picture here. I have some things on web scraping if you wanted to collect your own data. But there's also some webcam sites if you wanted to do image. But you know, there's data coming from all over the places. If you wanted to do something with sensors, and in fact, if you're big into sensors, I'm not an expert in this area, but I do know folks like Dr. Phil Williams that is big time. He knows how to do sensors. He knows how to work with the Internet of Things. So if you need a mentor for your project, let me know. And just a final word, as you're looking for data, yeah, question. How current is the data set? There are data sets out there and they're 10 years old. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Depends on your needs. How reliable is this data set coming from, you know, a government source or a professional society, or it's been vetted or curated? Because can people put phony website data sets out there? Well, absolutely. So knowing how reliable it is, who's publishing it, you know, is it objective? Is it balanced? Does it, you know, and again, this is having time. If you select this stuff early, you have enough time to like Google, you know, any complaints or reviews or you know, other people who've used this data set and have said, oh, watch out for this or watch out for that. And is it fact or opinion? One thing you may want to look at is how clean is this data set? Are there some missing values? Are there some miscoded fields? How good is this data set? We'll take a look at some of the techniques that people use to basically scrub and clean. But often when you find a data set, yeah, sometimes, let me put it this way, sometimes it's kind of dirty. Now, sometimes you can clean it up so it's good enough for your purposes. But again, this is why it goes back. You want to start your data projects early because you may find that even once you get your idea and once you get your data, you may find you need like 2 weeks, 2 or 3 hours a week for 2 weeks, just to look at this data set, check are there outliers, are there missing values, are there miscoded values, and there's, by the way, there are a number of techniques. We'll look at some of those techniques when we, for example, look at some of our Python examples. But just be aware, sometimes just getting to know the data set and checking it out and cleaning it up, again, it can take time. Okay. So we mentioned, getting your mindset, getting your data set, and then thinking about what are the skills that I need, what are the tools that I will need. Okay. So let me mention here, in terms of the skills that you will need, again, another reason for getting a project picked early. What kind of data is this? Because if it's text data, that's going to be a different skill set than if it's spreadsheet data. And if it's spreadsheet data, are you going to be exploring? Okay, probably basic statistics would be very useful. And I've got a list here on a variety of different skills and packages for just doing statistics. But maybe you're like, well, wait a second, I'm going to be wanting to do predictions. I want to do classifications. Again, I've got an overview of some of these techniques, as well as, do I want to use R? Do I want to use Python? Do I want to use a package? So I've got some suggestions there. And also have some tips on, some more advanced, machine learning techniques. Maybe you want to do something with a large language model. So you're going to be on the AI spectrum, in which case, maybe what you need to be researching, yes, is this, how to build a large language model application. Yeah. So maybe, you're like, well, what I really want to do is that, I want to build a large language model application. And I've got an idea, and, but, you may have to spend some time, looking at wait a second, well, what happened to our projector? Okay, well, good news is folks can see. Okay, well, good news, our folks can see, but let me just, in the classroom, we just lost our projector. Let me just see something here. Let's just see if we can get this to reconnect. That's interesting. So what we'll do is, for folks in the classroom, if folks who have their laptops, if you want to just make sure you go to the Blackboard, to the virtual classroom, you'll be able to see. And we do have monitors in the back for anyone who wants to either join a buddy who has a laptop, or I was going to say, if you want to view it yourself. But the good news is, for the folks who are in class, they can see. So don't quite know why, but we'll keep going, and as long as we're capturing this all in the recording, we will move on from there. Okay. All right. Oh, and just turn off your speakers for your PCs, because otherwise we get the noise. So just please turn off speakers. Perfect, perfect. Yay. Okay, again, got to turn off got to mute yourself. Okay. Is that good? Oh, yeah, and somebody still needs to mute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and as I say, you can work with your buddy too, or the machines in the back are internet able. So that is good. Okay. All right, so we'll keep rocking and rolling. But yes, and as I say, just keep in mind that a lot of these articles are not necessarily, let me put it this way, they're not a definitive list. You know, depending on the type of data, you may have something else. Okay. All right. So let me just mention, all right, one more, okay, very good. So, and again, folks, if you're not able to mute, please, okay? Somebody has their mic on. Who has their mic on? Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think we're good now. Very good. All righty. So what's the last thing I want to talk about? We talked about mindset, we talked about data set, and we talked about figuring out the skills that you'll need for your project and picking out the right tools to assist you. Okay. Last thing is tips for writing up and presenting a good data science project. Communication. So as I say, you need the skills and the tools to do the model planning, the model building, to be able to operationalize, to put your models into production, to put your data science applications into production. But communicating results. I want to make sure I talk about that the last couple minutes here. I was just earlier this week talking with Dr. Hollema, and he had been talking with Blue Cross Blue Shield because they're big into health informatics. Number one skill that they're working on with their data analysts is how to tell their data stories, how to communicate. And it's about being able to write up a report. So on Thursday, we'll show you an example of a data project report. But it's also about the listening and the reading. It's about being able to present your work. And we'll talk a little bit about, I've got some links on how to do a great research paper, how to do a great research talk, and how to prepare a 3-minute presentation. But the whole telling the story is so critical. And I was trying to think of, you can do the readings, but what can I tell you to motivate why it is so important? We have all this data. We have all these skills. We have all these tools. Why do we need to be able to communicate? So here's what I want to tell you. And this story now is the Challenger disaster. Now, I don't know how many people, because this Challenger disaster, I couldn't believe it. It's now about 40 years. I believe the Challenger disaster was 1986. But this was a very famous case where essentially they sent up a space shuttle and it exploded, and all 7 astronauts that I believe. I think it was, 7 crew members were killed. And the backstory on the Space Shuttle Challenger is that they had a problem with what was called the O-rings. And the problem that they had with the O-rings is that when the temperature got cold, the O-rings would lose, essentially, I guess, their elasticity. And there was a chance for hot gases to get past the O-rings, and that could cause an explosion. And this was something that the engineers, over time, they'd become aware of this problem. But the engineers, even though they knew they had a problem, even though they had the data, even though they had the skills and the technology to analyze the data, they were terrible communicators. And so let me show you this. This has gotten a lot of press. But here's an example of the types of graphs. Let me see if I can make this big, okay? These were the types of graphs or charts that the engineers were producing and giving to the managers, the folks that needed to make the decision to launch and not launch. Well, I don't know about you folks who are, looking at this screen. What story does this tell? It's a mystery, right? And this is the problem. The engineers, they were talking and communicating to other engineers. They needed to communicate to the managers at NASA who were business people, who were communication people, who, had millions of people who were watching this launch and who needed to be able to explain, if they were going to cancel this launch, why they needed to cancel. So a part of the Challenger story is it is a data communication disaster, because the engineers, this is what they were trying to communicate. And it was Greek. I mean, it made sense to the engineers. It made no sense to the people who needed to make the decision. So let me just show you, if we go back here, let's show a different picture. Now this is after the fact, okay? Let me just see. Okay, this is after the fact, but here's another way of taking that data. And notice here, they have along the bottom, they have temperature. And then here's the estimated failure probability. And the black line represents their most likely estimate of failure. The red lines are sort of their, confidence levels. But it's the black line. That's what their models said were the most likely failure. So that morning, it was a particularly cold morning in Florida at Cape Canaveral. It was 36 degrees Fahrenheit when the Challenger launched. So let's go ahead and put your mouse on 36 degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then take your mouse up and see where you hit the line, okay? Look at that. About 75% was the most likely estimate of the failure. Would you get into any plane, train, or automobile if the chance of a crash was 75% on that trip? You'd be like, no freaking way. This is what, hindsight is always 20/20. Of course, the Challenger shuttle, the shuttle program has been now retired, and they did redesign for the O-rings. But the bottom line is, this is a great example They had the data. They knew there was a problem. Again, they had the skills, they had the tools, but they did not know how to communicate to the decision makers in a meaningful way so they would understand that at 36 degrees, they should not have ever launched that space shuttle. If they had had that chart, they could have gone to the millions of people who were watching. They could have gone to the networks. They could have put up that chart and they said, we cannot launch because it's 36 degrees and the probability of failure is unacceptably high. They could do that with that chart, but you can see they obviously could not have done it with that other chart. And definitely, communication matters. Let me put it this way. It wasn't just that 7 astronauts were killed, but if you read through this entire article, and this is the part that is just so chilling, and this is the part that, it has been estimated that when the Challenger blew up, look at this, the estimate is that some of the crew members were alive after it blew up, as much as 2 minutes and 45 seconds before the cabin, hit the ocean surface, which would have, broken every bone in their bodies, the force of the impact. But this is what disturbed people so much. If they had died instantaneously, there would have been some comfort in that. But to this day, it is chilling to think that those crew members would have been alive 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I mean, just literally put your phones on a timer and time 2 minutes and 45 seconds. That's a lot of time to think about that you're going to die. So again, if folks don't think visualization and telling the story matters, it really does matter. If you're going to, in our field, if you cannot communicate with data, it's kind of like, that saying, if a tree falls in the wilderness and nobody around to hear it, it really, doesn't have any impact. So with that, do make sure that as you're planning your schedule for your project, that you're taking the time to leave yourself enough time at the end to write a good report, to edit, review it, and to think about your story. So what we will do on Thursday is a couple things. We'll take a look at this article that this student did, which is a great example of a data analysis project. And then the other thing we will do on Thursday is we'll go over the data science project report and presentation. Because now that I think that by Thursday everybody should be in the class, which is very good. By Thursday, we'll go over the data science project report and presentation. So at the end of this week, you'll have all the information that you need to go ahead and to start, being able to start looking for your ideas. So we've got, we're finishing right on time. Any questions before we wrap up?
Will you go over what is expected for the assignment for this week?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes, we can. For folks who'd like to get a head start on week 2, week 2 is about thinking about what sort of background would you like to brush up on. So we've got a whole bunch of different tutorials. Statistics 101, predictive modeling, digital analytics, optimization, classification methods, Classification with PyTorch, I've gotten mixed reviews on that one. That one, you know, you can kind of get through it, but you really need to print out a progress report. Or linear regression with PyTorch. And then for folks who are more advanced, if you want to move ahead and do a quick introduction to machine learning or Spark machine learning library, you're welcome to do that. And again, just pick one. And whatever level or wherever you want to start off, basically you'll probably be doing a lot of reviewing of your skills to see, hey, which one would be most useful for what I want to use. And again, you can go ahead and should be classification. Yeah, and they should all be hopefully pretty frequent. Yeah, but as I say, and as they say, if you run into one that seems too out of date, it's fine to abandon it. And they say there was stuff that was working great last year, not working so great, you know, maybe as of 2 days ago. But is that clear? Yeah, pick whichever tutorial you'd like to start off reviewing and building your background.
Okay, thank you for that. So if I'm trying to navigate to get to the screen that you have up on the board, it looks like I have to start and attempt one to get to that screen.
Well, what you should be able to go is go to week 2.
Yep.
And it should, yes, you go to week 2, it should be this one, practice with analysis techniques assignment.
Right, so when I click on that.
What does it tell you?
All it shows me is I need to start attempt 1. It doesn't tell me the details that it shows up on your screen.
Well, here, let's do a quick student preview. Yeah, let's see if I can reproduce. So you go to week 2, and you do. Yes. So what you need to do is complete the tutorial. Yes, what you have to do is complete the tutorial in cognitive class, and then once you've completed your certificate, the way you are able to submit your certificate is you start attempt 1.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I need to go to cognitive class AI.
Right.
And then do one of these, and then submit the certificate.
Right. Now, you can go in. Don't worry. If you start your first attempt, just don't submit. You're not ready to submit. Just go back and say, hey, I'm going to save and close, Or I'm just
okay.
I'm going to click on the purple X to eject. So, yeah.
Okay, I got you. So I was trying to do it without hitting attempt 1.
Right.
I got it now. Thank you.
But the good news is you should, I see. Yes. But if you want to continue attempt 1, you get the instructions. But yes, don't submit until you've completed one of the exercises. And then you can just, for right now, just hit the purple button to go back.
Gotcha. Okay, I didn't want to waste an attempt. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yes. And you'll notice every time I go back, I'm still on attempt 1.
Sure. Sounds good.
Excellent. No, that was a good question. All right. Well, if folks are good, we will wrap up the recording and we'll continue our discussion on Thursday.